All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Dynascape's Intermediate Cup Semifinals Showcase. My name is Dynascape, your host, and today I'm joined by Sparky. Sparky, how are we feeling about this pool?
Oh, I am feeling absolutely excited about this map pool. I think we've uh, developed something that I hope appeases a lot of the players remaining in this tournament. We finally said goodbye to some teams this round, so those that are surviving, it only gets a tiny bit harder. I don't think the jump is that great, but I'm sure there's going to be somebody that's like, man, these maps are like impossible compared to quarterfinals. And it remains to be seen. What do you think, Dinah?
Uh, Maybe a bit biased, but I do think that this is my favorite pool overall by far. We have a lot of cool surprises for you guys, a lot of banger song choices, a lot of fun maps to play. And regarding the difficulty, I think definitely in some places we didn't scale too hard, and then I think I'll try to point it out. In some categories, I honestly do think that we kind of gave not really a middle finger, but rather just like it gets it's a decent jump from quarterfinals. You'll see. But regardless, we can go ahead and show you guys the first maps of the pool. This is going to be Rice 1, or Jump Stream map.
Yeah, jumping on in here. It is going to be Okashi no Okoku on 1.1x. We got a Stupid Man chart up in here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is our first Stupid Man chart of the tournament, but this is a good one for sure. At 1.1x, it's going to hit around 209 BPM, and, you know, it's getting faster. I think last round was exactly 200 BPM or something like that, 199. So, you know, another 10 BPM increase. If you've been counting past the rounds, you know, we've had pretty much a 10 BPM increase every single round. So, I mean, it's getting really fast now.
Oh, absolutely. And it was funny. I was playtesting this, and for a lot of players, I think 209 is a pretty comfortable BPM still for those that really do enjoy jump stream. I do not. This felt like a nightmare to play, even though it was all jumps. There aren't any hands, like no 3-note chords in this chart, but just balancing a lot of these jumps at this BPM, at least for me, is a pretty tall ask, and it'll be interesting to see which teams begin to really feel the strain of this BPM. There are a couple of nestled like 1.6, 1.8 bursts. I can't really tell the snaps right out of the gate, but it does pick up tempo a little bit before diving back into the 1/4. But those are few and far between, and they're pretty telegraphed in the music if you are keeping track of what is going on. And then you do finally get a break after about, what, a minute 30 of non-stop streaming here.
Yeah, I think this map definitely has like a lot of character to it. There's a lot of different things present, even though it is just a WP map. Of course, we always try to pick maps that do have, you know, just a little something else. And so there are a couple rolls, a couple two-hand trills, like you said, you know, weird 1/6 or 1/8 inside column graces, strangely enough. So definitely a fun one to pick. Definitely a cool song as well. Shout out to Snail's House, and that's gonna be our jump stream pick for the round. That was Okashi no Okoku, 210 BPM. And going into Rice 2, this is a bit of a special treat. We have a custom map by Hubert, our good friend, and made us a speed map, of course, as the Rice 2 usually goes. This is 275 BPM, and I don't know what else to say except for it's really fun to play through. It's a good song, and it is kind of like index charted like the last speed map in quarterfinals. So a lot of camos, a lot of weird things going on. So maybe a couple of players will find that pretty difficult and pretty physical as well.
Yeah, for sure. As opposed to the jump stream pick, of course, with the speed picks, we try to keep the jumps in the actual streams to a minimum so you can focus on the single note patterning and when you do crank up the BPM, again, similar story to what we try and do with the Rice 1 stuff, is the BPM increase is really what the difficulty spike is meant to be. Sure, some of the patterns do get a little bit tricky as you continue to read through here, but overall, if you are able to handle this BPM, it should still be a pretty comfortable pick for a lot of players. The patterning is really what'll determine whether or not it is hard or not for the ones that can do it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And honestly, I think the first half is pretty easy in comparison to the second half. Some of the runs in the second half are very abrasive. Again, pad charting. So if you do have a pad at home, make sure you try it out, because I think it might be in Hubert's In the Groove pack soon.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's really, really cool that you can play it on both your hands and your feet. Kind of crazy. But again, like going from 261 BPM to 275 BPM is a pretty decent increase. It almost, a whole rate. Again, not that long of a map, but still abrasive enough to be, qualified as a semifinals pick. And I think that a lot of lesser physical players will struggle on it. That's gonna do it for Rice 2. Moving into Rice 3, see what we have here. We have Fire in the Sky 1.2. For those of you guys that remember last year's 40M, 1.05 was used in the round of 32. We said forget that. 1.2 for you guys in the semifinals of this tournament.
Yeah, we begin to break away from the quote-unquote standard Rice picks. We start to dive into the more mixed Rice, pseudo kind of tech category that we like to have between Rice 3 and Rice 6 in previous rounds. Wait, did we go up to 6 or 5? 6. Yeah, we go up to 6. I forget how to count sometimes.
This round, Sparky.
I know, we're going to add a map at the end. I wonder what category it's going to be. But regardless, going back to this chart, I think it's more of what players have come to expect whenever we try to find these more mixed Rice picks. We find stuff that is either a little bit on the dumpy side or at least justifiable, in which we're making you play these Gray Snow Flam heavy sections here and there. This one definitely fills in a lot of the lighter tones in the music pretty liberally, so hopefully it is still easy to follow along. And thankfully not an elevated OD. It's gonna be OD 8 still, so not really wanting to push the real sharpshooting aspect. It's already hard enough to get good ac on some of these bursts, that I think making it a little tighter would be maybe a bridge too far, but still enough of a difficulty jump compared to last round that I think there's plenty of opportunity for players to pick up either bad judgments or just outright misses on some of these patterns.
Yeah, Fire in the Sky, I think, definitely has some very, very, I guess, easier patterning in terms of how Vocal Dump usually is. A lot of these, 6 streams, and sometimes you can even get to like 8th Flam, stuff like that. They're very, very telegraphed. They're very not hard to hit. They're just like really rolly, as you can see here. They just go on pretty much throughout your whole, hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of column approach. And thankfully, I think the phrases are pretty long, and there's not really too many breaks in this map. This map is about 2 minutes and 56 seconds long. So even though that the patterns really aren't too technical, it's still, a decent accuracy test as far as vocal dumps go, as well as just having that, stamina approach to things where you're kind of doing this for a very long time.
Yeah, it's one of those, I think we have conversations where it's like the trade-offs when it comes to like density versus length. We kind of err on, if it's longer, you kind of try to make the patterning a little bit lighter, and if it's shorter, you try to get as much in there as you can, give or take a couple of situations. But overall, this one's definitely going to be a test of consistency. Probably easy to full combo, but pretty hard to get the good accuracy on. It'll be interesting to see how players do on this one. But with that being said, we can move on to Rice 4. It is going to be Naked. I think this is the ranked chart.
Yeah, it is. We are getting naked over here in Dynascape's Intermediate Cup. This is
God.
another. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Uh, this is another vocal dumpy kind of map. You'll see that pretty much the first third is a lot of just single jacks with anchors and then doubles as well. But then it kind of starts to disintegrate, kind of starts to distort into very, very abrasive patternings. I think that compared to Fire in the Sky, they're both vocal dumps. This one has a more isolated approach in the difficulty of the jacks and the streams. I think usually it goes where the difficulty will be streams and then it'll be jacks after that instead of it being kind of meshed together from the previous map. But it still has that same dump approach. And another thing to point out is that the streams in here are really, really abrasive, way more so than Fire in the Sky. The patterning is pretty tough and also I believe faster in general.
Yeah, and unlike Fire in the Sky, this one does have that elevated OD. So this one is going to be the real test of can you sharpshoot some of the 300 counts in this. And it definitely does have a bit more of a chord jack base without it being like a pure dedicated chord jack, because there is enough other things going on to still give it the moniker of a mixed rice pick. I wouldn't call it full tech because it is focusing on the vocal dump aspect of it, but overall you're still relying on your ability to keep the pulse going once things do start to settle down, and then getting back into the groove once the vocals come in and out. So and again, it's about a minute shorter, so we do try to pack in as much as we can if it is that shorter length. Another example of that being in this one.
All right, so next one is going to be Bounce. I know, as Sparky said, we've had, a decent bit of shorter maps, a minute 40, a minute 40, a minute 50, besides Fire in the Sky. This one is a bit on the longer side, so this is 3.5 minutes. I don't think that's the entire drain time, but this is an edit by Alexire and also provided us with rates, so thank you to Alexire for giving this map to us and for editing it for our tournament purposes. And kind of similar to Rice 3 and Rice 4, I guess you could kind of say that this is vocal dump, but again, it takes a different approach from the other two maps. I think Bounce is more about single jack speed and also weirdly enough trills. There's a lot of one-hand trills and also even some two-hand trills as well, and I guess I would say jack anchors. So just kind of like a lot of weird Rice difficulty. I think the three maps that we've seen so far in the kind of like dumpy category really blend well together and kind of support each other and hit different things.
Yeah, for sure. There's an element in each that I think teams can latch onto, and conversely, I think there's elements in each that teams would probably want to avoid. And yes, they all follow that same breadth of category inside of these three picks, but like you mentioned, is that they have different approaches to what is fundamentally the same problem. And it's going to be interesting to see which of the three, if not all three, teams would want to go towards if they want to approach this Rice category and avoid maybe getting into these accuracy shootouts on Rice 1 and 2. Which of these do you feel most comfortable going toe-to-toe with another duo to try and maybe induce misses, or can you out-ratio them? It's going to be interesting to watch once we get into next weekend.
This map definitely a bit more Gracie than the last two that we saw. Very isolated Graces as well, and I thought it was pretty funny to see, I believe, basically 230 BPM isolated jacks. So I have to wonder if people will just take bad judgments on that if they don't have that speed with them. But regardless, I think the main difficulty of it, all besides that, is those denser parts when you get into the chorus. It is very I guess full as a chart when that happens, and there's a lot to kind of balance through. We are getting into a slowdown here finally, 3/4 into the map. I honestly don't think that there were that many breaks before that, and so it's kind of a nice, little cushion to have a bit of a slowdown before you finally get into what I believe is the last chorus.
Yeah, it's a nice little mood change, and I think we've been seeing a trend when it comes to some of these charts that have these kind of abrupt or loosely telegraphed BPM changes. Players tend to hold focus, and then as soon as something changes, just something lets go, and that's when we see those like break misses where there's literally nothing happening and just somebody misses on air. And with a song like this, it's like you get hit so hard at the end that not having that combo cap to kind of see you through to the end, if you're trying to build through that ending, that could be a turning point. If there's like a 10,000 point gap, that could just swing it back in another team's favor. So definitely watch out for that if you are going to try and go for something like this in your match.
I think we've seen that way too many times in the tournament already, for sure. And we can finally move on to Rise 6. This is going to be Sparkle Downer by our good friend Ballistic. Provided us with some rates, and we went along with 1.05 for the semifinals pick. This is also the last, I guess, like mixed-ish pick. This is this is a Terminal 11 song. This is what you expect to be the tech pick, and I think Ballistic really knocked it out of the park here. Another short map. It's like a minute 56, but this minute 56 is very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I will say I feel partly responsible for the reason why we're using 1.05 instead of the base rate, and I don't apologize for that. Turns out that if I get a good score on Rice, it's too easy.
Yeah, it's like Sparky set the score and Logan's like, too easy. Let's go with 1.05 instead. It's like, oh boys, I'm really sorry to the players if you find this too hard. But honestly, to the other Rice picks.
Honestly, it still plays really nice on 1.05. It becomes this real test of if your fingers can handle these more jittery patterns. There's just, unlike the vocal dumps that we had in the previous 3 picks, or I mean, you can argue the semantics of what category they would be. This one definitely feels more in line with like what folks would probably expect a tech pick to be, because every noise has something to it, and just having these grace notes, these bursts all over the place, the implied mini jacks all over the place, where you're needing to either double bounce, triple bounce off of the same key in the same sequence, and then transition into a completely different snap variation. This is arguably my favorite chart of this Rice pool, and thank you, Ballistic, for making this one. It's incredibly fun to play.
Oh yeah, super fun. Shout out to Ballistic again. That is gonna do it for Rice 6. We have but one more Rice pick in the pool, and that's gonna be Sound Piercer's Tencent Min Ritai. Mystic Eyes is set, except we got them to provide us with an edit, so thank you very much to Mystic Eyes for allowing us to do so for, again, our tournament purposes. This is going to be the chord jack pick of the pool. Of course, we are getting into that best 11 first to 6, so we upped the pool a little bit, added one to the Rice, added one to the LNs yet again, and here's that last Rice pick.
Yeah, this one plays similar to the last round. We had like a chord jack centric pick last round, but we didn't want to call it a full chord jack pick. This one has the chord jack element as a forefront, but you do have these little novelties thrown throughout that definitely keep you on your toes. Not the hardest runs, but when you're trying to keep that persistent 1-2 patterning, it definitely does wear away at you. I found myself not bouncing back up after some of these runs to get back into that chord jack swing. So definitely watch out for those transitions when they do arrive. They're very telegraphed, but when you're not expecting them, that's when you start to get those lack of accuracy. And then sections like this where you have those little 3-note burst flourishes interspersed between the jacks, that's going to be what I imagine the section that causes a lot of these runs to kind of think.
Yeah, those flourishes are really the killer of this map to me. You're so in tune with that 1-2, and then you just have to start doing that. It's kind of insane. People that can act that are, you know, probably looking to pick this map for sure. And not to mention, you know, the other Rice elements in it. You know, you had those funny two-headed chills with the phone ring, and then some of the single streams as well at 124 BPM. So a couple different things, but again, just the Jack-centric map of the pick. Again, thank you to Mystic Eyes, and that's gonna do it for the Rice pool. We can move on to LN1. And LN1's gonna be a Logan custom. This is gonna be Bandmaid's Choose Me, which is a banger, by the way. And this is going to be the release map of the LN pool. I don't know what to say other than this is such a banger map. it's really fun.
Oh yeah, it definitely has a little bit of everything. Really great song, and this is really going to be the bulk of what this chart is. Just these, I don't want to call them like Jack-centric patterns, because that would be a disservice to the patterning. But just these shield, reverse shield LNs that I typically find to be a little cumbersome after a while. It's going to be interesting to see if players can avoid the pitfall that comes with maps like this, where you're bouncing your fingers so much off the keys at certain points that the tendency is to want to release those longer holds. And slider breaks on something like this, maybe not going to be the most devastating. It is pretty long, and there is quite a bit of combo to rebuild from. So it's not going to be similar to like the earlier rounds where one miss is basically the end of your team's run. So definitely don't count this pick out if you want a longer form chart in this LN category to kind of settle your team in to a match.
And I think, you know, between you and I for the play testing, I would have to say that, you know, a lot of the accuracy drops, or just like drops in general, happen when you have to hold a note, release it, and then re-hold that note after a fourth. It's you know, that, you know, those like inverse gaps, I guess, on that single column can really get to you, especially since it happens so often. Not necessarily the releases for some people, but like patterns like that can definitely catch out, I guess, higher tier players in terms of LNs and maybe choke. As for the people that aren't super comfortable on LN and start to really wean off in terms of accuracy this round, definitely I can see people being like, oh, that was a good run, and then when you get to the break that's coming up, you look at your accuracy and you're probably like a sub 99, and it's like, huh, how did that happen? Where did I drop those 200s, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then you get into the back half of the chart and you start to get inundated with these solos that come through, and oh boy, this section is such a hit or miss. At least when I was testing it, it was either I hit it and managed to continue my FC run, or I just completely bit it. And that was the first solo. Once we get past this 3/4 mark, there is a final flourish to round this map out. So you get back into the more coordination-centric motifs that you've been going through for basically 3 minutes at this point. And getting those little dense pockets thrown at you can definitely throw you off your game, especially earlier on when there were those like drum fills or just little moments in the song where the density kind of picked up. Settling back into that groove is going to be so important to ensure that you can make it through this map relatively unscathed. And here's the second flourish. The density doesn't last for too long, but if you're not expecting it, once again, just can find yourself either losing a run or just losing your accuracy when you're trying to lock into a groove. So Nice introduction to the LN section. Definitely wanted to step up the overall difficulty of this particular side of the map pool, and I think this is a great introduction to that.
Moving on ahead into more of the LNs. This is going to be our density pick. Beat map by one of our players, Pataraj. We're choosing Sailing Force 1.1. I believe this was used in OMLN. Can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was like a route of 64 1.1 or something like that. I could be wrong, but it's somewhere in there. But I mean, this is very, dare I say, physical of a density pick. BPM being at 175, so you know, pretty straightforward 175 density. But then you get kind of these schlong 6 LN runs, and also some of the jacks in here are pretty deadly as well when you transition in and out of these phrases.
Yeah, for sure. Ironically enough, I feel like players see this higher BPM LN stuff and they're like, oh, okay, finally, an LN pick that I'm comfortable with, because of the fact that when you do increase this BPM, it kind of becomes a little easier to coordinate the shorter LN sections with the longer holds. And that's usually when we find the more rice-oriented players get brought back into the fold. So that dichotomy between the more LN-centric players and the rice players that are being asked to do an LN pick, this map might be one that's going to be a little contentious. That being said, you do have that little slow inverse section that could catch some players out, and then those really short 1/8 runs. Basically play it like rice, you should be fine, but seeing just a wall of LN coming at you can definitely cause some misreads if your skin isn't the most suited to it. So it's gonna be interesting to see that particular thing unfold.
Yeah, crazily enough, I can't wait for players to get a higher score on this compared to like Amamichi or Sagashimono, funnily enough.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That is going
and
to
I'm
happen.
just gonna be astounded. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but I just know it's gonna happen a couple times in this round.
Oh
That's
yeah.
gonna do it for LN2. Moving on into LN3, talking about Groovy. This is Anathrax with a custom map. Mayumi Fujita featuring Lotus Juice. Pull the trigger. This is from Persona, so of course, you know, it's gonna be funky. Thank you again to Anathrax for providing this custom. This is gonna be in our wildcard position.
You know, there's a fun coincidence that this is the wild card pick and it's a Persona song. That just hit me right now.
Yeah, that's funny.
That being said, this is definitely a culmination of release elements with coordination thrown into it. Some maybe slightly intrusive rice here and there, but it's not the forefront of the difficulty, but it does definitely keep you a little bit grounded in terms of where you're pressing. And again, just another real test of being able to handle these maybe techier patterns, the start of these LNs. Not the most structured. There's definitely some bursts here and there to start, and then the releases, of course, not in sync with each other, so can definitely find yourself dropping a number of 200s if you're not too careful. And we have an instance of maybe easy to combo, hard to act.
I think that probably for this map for me, the hardest section is at the start of those courses. It's so dense, like you're pretty much holding either 2 or 3 notes and then doing something on 1 or 2 other columns at the same time. It gets really tricky to coordinate. I'd say that's probably the most difficult section of the map. You just pass through the Lotus Juice verse, and honestly I think those are where people can really stabilize and try to get back their act, because you know, there's some funky rhythms as with Lotus Juice rapping, but it's very not dense, so pretty easy part to go through. And then we have again the startup of the course where it's really tricky, you know, and with the rice combined, I find myself hitting a lot of weird 200s that I'm like, I don't think I should have hit a 200 there.
Oh, absolutely. And then, like you mentioned, once you have these rap sections start to come back, it does settle back into a tiny bit more of a coordination-centric groove, but there is definitely still some release elements being tested. So definitely, again, very fitting for a wild card LN type of pick. There's really a medley of things that you need to coordinate during that. So, with that being said, as you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, we are adding another LN pick to the pool. Welcome to LN4.
Oh boy, and this is Juan's guest diff on Alice's set of Kickback, Juan's extra power. This one is very mean. I would say that this is probably on the hard side of the semifinals pool. Just very, very tough to coordinate. There are a lot of density rushes and weird coordination things that Juan likes to do that just make this map just so difficult.
Yeah, Juan has a really good sense of how to really stretch the limits of some of this LN patterning, because for whatever reason, there are just little sections here and there where the density ramps up, and if you're not too careful, you can definitely find yourself spiking misses without even really feeling like anything has picked up in terms of overall difficulty. So definitely fitting for the extra LN pick. Definitely another wildcard-esque type of pick, except instead of doing like releases, we're doing kind of density with the coordination for this one.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way of putting it, because I find that the hardest sections of this map are when you're coordinating one very long note, and then on the other three columns you have these, as I said before, density rushes where they're super quick. I think they're 204, they might even be 6 or something like that, but it's like really weird density on 3 columns. It's just so tough, and you can definitely find a lot of misses if either you're not physical enough or if you don't have the reading associated or needed for this map. So definitely a very hard pick. I think a lot of people will probably strike this one out, or LN1, if I had to take a gander at what people don't like in the LN pool. And I don't know, expect this one to be very contested. Expect, very big score differences, because I think in some of these sections you can take a slew of misses and get a huge swing.
For sure. That being said, similar to LN1, it is on the longer side, so recoveries from misses definitely possible. Definitely one where you could have like a last second comeback if a team kind of settles in and starts getting a little bit too comfortable with a lead that they have. I mean, to be fair, they're not to know that they're in the lead whenever they're playing, but it seems like from an onlooker's perspective, you can kind of just feel when those comebacks are going to happen. And again, you have these rushes of just sudden density coming through, and there's not really a lot going on in the song. It's just when those fills come through, you're having to do so many things on 3 columns while holding on to an anchor that it definitely tests your ability to read through some of those sections while holding on to specific keys. So yeah, definitely gonna be a nice map to watch players duke it out on. That being said, like you mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a frequent target of bans come next weekend.
Bit of a toughie, but thankfully for the noodle haters, that's going to be the end of the LN pool. We can get into the hybrids, and I really like this hybrid pool. This is hybrid 1, this is Sanji Junihun, and this one is very much a shout out to my good friends Sunapple and Mash. Uh, Unused map in Holomania. If you're an old head, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But this is probably one of my favorite maps that just never got used, and I've been waiting for a chance to pool it. This was the right time for it, and this is kind of our more rice focused hybrid.
Yeah, this map definitely it feels calm for certain stretches, and then you have that's a precursor. That little run leading into this next section is a sign of what is to come. You have these calm verses to go through, and then just all of a sudden the density just ramps up to an 11, comes to a head, and then just calms down, and ensuring that you're able to read your way through some of those runs is really what's going to make or break performances on this chart. The LNs, not the most intrusive in comparison to like the LN picks, like the pure LN picks, but can definitely catch some players out if they're not too careful. There are some staggered starts, some staggered stops, but that's not going to be the focus of this pick. It's going to be the rice transitions in between that are what we're looking to see if you guys can handle while playing through this song.
Yeah, I've probably played through this map like 100 times. It's definitely one of my most played maps, and I've got to say that, you know, there are some funny releasey elements, but the place where I always drop the most ag or just the most score in general are the rice sections, like this one coming up here. Pretty abrasive streams. I think those are 12ths, so something like 270 for a very short amount of time, but those patterns are very deadly. Yeah, I mean, this map is just super fun to play through, though. I think that if you are, hanging in there with the rest of the rice pool, you should be able to breeze by these single streams pretty much no problem. Maybe the last one will catch you, and I think in general that's the hardest one out of all of them. And coming up here, we have a bit of a funny LN trill as well. Just after this little break, I'll try to point it out.
Yeah, a tiny bit of a reprise of the earlier section where you saw that big build up, and again it just begins, the waves start to crash down on the patterning. Things start to ramp up in difficulty, they start to get more dense, and as you start to settle in, you start to get a grasp of what's happening, it kind of flows away. There's the trill that Dinah was talking about. That is going to be very funny to watch as we make our way into next week, and I hope people choose this, because that trill is going to catch somebody out before this weekend's over.
Oh yeah, so definitely not side readable, but I think overall just that LN pattern is pretty funny. Maybe the hardest LN part of the map, but hope you guys really enjoy Sanji Junahun. This is definitely one of my favorite picks of the tournament. We can move on to Hybrid 2, yet another banger. This is Abraxos's Daylily.
Yeah, I think Abraxos has some of the most abrasive ideas when it comes to overall patterning. Like, their interpretation of songs is always a delight, because they find very unique ways of making things play very difficult when it's so calm at times. And this is no exception.
Yeah. Thankfully for this map, I would say that pretty much the first, like, fourth or maybe third is only LN difficulty, kind of. There's some release tricks here and there. It's not really any crazy rice patterns. But then it really ramps up. This is more of our 50-50 hybrid pick. And there are definitely a couple of evil rice patterns in this map. It's kind of funny to think about now. I can't wait to see how players deal with it in match when the nerves are going on.
Yeah. And here's one of the better examples of that abrasive patterning I was talking about. This is so freeform in structure. You have all these grace notes. It feels, I feel for some it might just feel random how it was interpreted, but when you're playing through it, it just flows so nicely that if you have the physicality to be able to withstand some of the nestled rice bursts inside of those LNs, it just feels like a blast. And as we continue on into the back half, we basically settle back down a little bit. There are some of these little fills, but they're just, again, just a chance to recover a little bit before we get into the last quarter, because things really do start to pick up. The patterns in the rice start to get a little bit harder to read through.
Oh yeah, like patterns like that. And here's the funny
long anchors.
Yeah, long anchors. 3 jacks into a hold on the same column is just evil. I cannot tell you how many runs of mine have died to that 2 seconds of map. It's kind of crazy. And also, I should probably mention that we passed by a pretty abrasive burst section as well right before that. So just a lot of weird rice patternings, and then also, of course, just the constant weird releases as well really make it a good fit for like that 50-50 where it has something that everyone will hate.
Oh, absolutely.
To put it bluntly.
Like there's something that'll make you uncomfortable in this map at some point. And for me, it was those anchors. Like, as soon as I got to those anchors on my sight read, I was like, you know what? No, I'm good. I'm done playtesting this. I understand the objective. Mission accomplished.
Exactly.
And I think I put it in the map testing. It was basically I didn't know why this was here, and then I saw it was a Braxos, and then everything clicked. I was like, okay, I understand.
All right. Well, yeah. With that being said, Hybrid 2, that was Daylily by Braxos. Last pick of the normal pool. This is gonna be OD by Hannah. I believe it was used in a couple of recent tournaments. But to be fair, in my defense, I've been trying to pull this since like 2022, since pre-Cold Open Cup. Decided it's too hard for Grand Finals to save it for this. And Sparky, I think you got like within 2,000 points with all of the hybrids. So this is kind of like the perfect, all 3 hybrids are really balanced, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like every single one caused me some level of pain. And there's something about just hybrid picks in general. This one might be familiar to some as well. This is Love Set from Hannah. And I mean, the song itself is just fantastic. And if you are a fan of Polyphia, you kind of understand what is going to happen in this chart. This one's definitely a lot more LN centric of the hybrid in this pool. So definitely expect the bulk of the difficulty to come from the LNs, or just aspects of LN technique are going to really cause some discomfort for those that aren't the most up to snuff with their LN proficiency. You do get some of these rice sections as well to kind of balance things out, a little bit of a core jack, mini jack oriented section, but again, you dive back in and it's just the LNs begin to intrude on the overall pattern structure. Some staggered starts, some staggered releases, and then the bursts and transitions in between that I love to talk about with these hybrids.
Yeah, that I guess light core jack section that we passed through is 136 BPM, but so not too much faster than our actual core jack pick of 124. But the patterning was so easy, and like you said, I mean, I think Hannah did a really good job of incorporating kind of that hybrid feel where rather than maybe something like Daylily where a lot of the difficulty is a bit more isolated in terms of LN difficulty, rice difficulty, I think this map does a good job of bringing it all together. Mainly LNs, mainly kind of like what you said, there's like that finesse required, and here we go with this weird coordination section. This one definitely very LN heavy in terms of difficulty, but again, I think that this map should be pretty clean for those of you that find Bandmaid's Choose Me, like LN1, to be pretty easy, as well as LN3 maybe. It kind of has that same feel to it.
Yeah, for sure. If you can handle pull the trigger also, I think this would be a pretty decent pick to look into as well. Just anything that's wild cardy. If you enjoy balancing some of these different elements, this might be a pretty good pick to try and look into, especially if tend to shy away from the more LN-centric picks. So with that being said, that will do it for the standard map pool. All that is left is to show you guys the semifinals tiebreaker.
And semifinals tiebreaker is going to be Mince, Zrokis. This is the not cut version, full length in all of its glory. About 3 minutes and 50 seconds of just, just mint tiebreaker-esque, I guess, patterning. 202 BPM, so a lot of the bursts, I believe, are 6, making it 303. And then, there's some jump streams here and there and stuff like that. But also, I really do think that the LN sections are real killers for teams that don't really have a balanced team. Two people that are really good at LNs, because some of these LN patterns can really catch you out if you're slacking, can really make you constantly drop misses if you don't have that reading yet.
Yeah, for sure. And on the flip side as well, if you can handle the LNs but don't have the physicality to handle some of the rice sections found in this chart, you can find yourself on the other side of the coin where that's really going to be the sections where you find the bulk of the misses. If you do find yourself in this situation, of course, as I always like to say, the best way to avoid having to play this is to just not get there in the first place. Just win.
Just win. And I think this map, I should also point out that there's some extended jack sections for the 202, even longer than the one we just passed through. And right now we're passing through actually a weird hybrid section. There's the extended jacks that I was talking about. It does a really good job, kind of like what I said in OD, of bringing it all together when needed. There's good isolation of rice, there's good isolation of LN, and then I think a lot of the map does just kind of have really good hybrid sections where you're doing things on LN while coordinating with rice, and it just all becomes kind of a blur.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks are probably used to, like, okay, you get the tiebreaker, okay, what 4-5 minute slog are we going to get through? But when you look at the length, 3 minutes 50 seconds, it doesn't give you a lot of time in comparison to other tiebreakers to kind of get back into it. But with that being said, it's one of those cases where it's like, if you do need to rely on a bit of a comeback, then maybe shouldn't have found yourself in a situation in the first place. So it's always interesting to see shorter length tiebreakers get used, and I for one am all for it, because if a map is already 30,000 points inside of a minute, there's really not that much that can happen that can swing that. If you find yourself at a deficit early, it's probably going to stay there unless your opponents run out of gas. And with this one, might be the case where we either see complete blowouts or we just see a dead heat until the very end.
Yeah, I think this map should be pretty fun to see if it's actually played in tiebreakers. I know a lot of these teams, they have what it takes to really get through this map and put up some really admirable scores. So can't wait to see how it goes next weekend. Zrokis kind of has a lot of different patterns represented as well. Not only just me saying, oh, there's rice, there's LN, blah blah, there's hybrid. There's jacks, there's weird bursts, there's density LN sections that we pass through in the middle point. There's some coordination / release LNs in the first half. It just throws the gauntlet at you, which is really what's needed in a tiebreaker. Circus just does the job, and very fitting for semifinals. I mean, we're getting to the point where this is 5 stars. I think this is our first 5-star actual map in this tournament, so that's kind of crazy to think about.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like this is a nice kind of like stepping stone into the late game that we have planned for the teams that managed to make it through to the finals. It's crazy to think that we're already past the halfway point, and we're gonna say bye to more teams come the end of next weekend. There is going to be one match tomorrow. The time eludes me, but be on the lookout for a ping if you want some Monday action for this tournament. It'll be the last quarterfinals match that'll help round out the bracket. But with that being said, Dinah, do you foresee that final match delaying the schedules by any stretch of the imagination?
No, actually, I'm. After we leave this stream, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the schedules right after, and also, of course, publishing all the highlights that I can get to from this weekend's matches. So be on the lookout again for a ping very soon, because I'm gonna start scheduling. Aside from that Monday 15:30 match, we'll do the schedules for those later and ping the teams individually for that. And of course, everything's gonna be on the sheet very soon. Statistics, challenge will be updated, all that good stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed the semifinals pool as much as I did, and we hope to see you guys next weekend. Good luck on your matches, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Ooh, some final notes before you close things out.
Ooh, true.
Y'all did a really good job handling the conditionals. Round of applause to you guys. If you are in the losers bracket, remember you do have 2 matches to contend with, so be sure to continue being fantastic and scheduling both of those. Again, we do not want teams losing the chance to make it to finals because they forgot about that conditional match. So please, please, please make sure you get that settled. If you do have any questions, reach out to Dinah, reach out to any of the folks that have been helping you guys out. And with that being said, I think it's time for us to say farewell. So until then, we'll catch you guys later.